Good afternoon. Hello everyone. Welcome back to MyTutor online school. Welcome back to English Language, English Literature, English generally. Nice to have you all back. So today we are going to be doing Creative Writing 101. So I'm going to be looking a little bit at fiction and a little bit at non-fiction. So I'm going to be looking at both papers, essentially a few hints, tips, tricks, some ideas on planning. I've got a Slido towards the start for you guys, and I've got a Kahoot at the end, which is just to do with terminology really, because it's difficult to do anything for creative writing that's interactive quiz-wise. So sort of same but different to what we have usually been doing. If you've got any questions regarding either creative writing or if a piece of terminology pops up and you can't remember what it is, just give me a shout and I'll go through it for you. Today is partly led by you essentially. So if there's anything that you want me to go over or focus on or spend a little bit more time on, please do let me know and I'll try to adapt as much as I can. Or if there's anything that we've done in previous lessons that you're not sure about that you want me to quickly recap, I will do my best to do that towards the end in the Q&A section if it's quite a big question. So if you guys don't know me, my name is Vicki. I'm sure you all know by now. Did English Language and Linguistics at uni, trained as a teacher last year, and I'm teaching my 400th lesson in an hour's time, individual lesson on MyTutor. So I'm going to be popping party poppers later, maybe, occasional party popper, not a wine gal. So we will talk about the next slide a little bit later. So let's quickly check Q&A. Hello. Right, are we all just saying hi? Thank you to everyone who's saying hi. Right, okay, so let's get cracking. So Bolla's going to be with us right at the start. So Bolla's here with us now. She's going to head off for a bit and then she's going to pop back towards the end of the session and we've got a little bit of news for you. Right, so thank you, Sidra. I'm very excited. So let's get to work. So across the two papers, there are a range of particular activities. I should have called it English 400. I should have done. So, right. So across the exams, there's a range of different things you can be asked to do, but essentially you pretty much just adapt to that particular question. So your paper 1 question 5, that's your fiction writing. So you might be given instruction. So for example, write about a time where a family went on holiday. That's one that we did a few weeks ago. You might be given a picture. Usually the picture is the descriptive task. So you will be given something like, write a description as this picture suggests, something along those lines. It's usually quite a nice general picture. I think the last exam, the November 2019 one, it was write a story based on this picture, and it was of a 2-3-year-old girl holding a snow globe. So it can be the narrative writing, although it tends to be the descriptive. Sentence starters, so you might get something like, it was all going well until, and then you have to carry on the story. Or you might get a title like, write a story with the title Danger. So those are the 4 different things that they can potentially throw at you for the paper 1. For the paper 2, you will always get a responding to a topic sentence. You do not have the option like you do in paper 1. What it is worth saying, I think I've told you guys this before, AQA cannot always say you are going to get 1 narrative and 1 descriptive. You could have 2 narratives or 2 descriptives because Ofqual said you can't guarantee which questions you're going to be giving your students. Although I think I'm yet to come across a paper which has had 2 of the same task. So by and large, you should be getting the same ones, although they might be thinking, we haven't done that yet, so we best do that. So that might be something that comes up. Right, responding to a topic sentence for paper 2, you don't have a choice. So you get something like, something which is a debate topic, but isn't a really heavy, hardcore, serious issue. So you won't get anything sort of on feminism, on racism, on capital punishment, on smoking, on drug use, anything like that. It's relatively mundane. So the one that I'm going to be showing you today is that all cars are dirty, smelly, and cause disruption to the environment, or something like that. Write a whatever to explain your point of view. So that's essentially what you get. It's the same format. You are told what your format is going to be, who your audience is going to be, and you can work out your purpose from the keywords in there as well. So you always get a topic sentence. You could be asked to write a letter, an article, so probably that would be a newspaper article. Recently they've just been saying write a newspaper article. The older papers in the series say write a broadsheet newspaper article, but you should be expecting to write a broadsheet newspaper article anyway. You could be asked to write a leaflet, a speech, or an essay. I don't think an essay has come up yet, and I'm not entirely sure that a leaflet has either, but articles are the one that comes up most frequently, because I think it's the one that we're most comfortable with writing anyway, and then second to that, speech, and then letter. We've had one letter so far, which I'm going to look at with you guys today. Right, okay. Cackle Fire. No, it doesn't. I've no idea what that poem is. Right, okay. Let's get cracking. So, Slido then first of all, so little words map just to get you guys warmed up a little bit. So this is literally throw any or all of the, I'm opening the chat's already there. Any or all of the pieces of terminology that we have been learning over these last few weeks together. So anything to do with the English language papers. So I don't want any poetry. So that might be where you are foxed out a little bit with that. No, I can't see people's faces with cameras on, so it's only the host who can do that. So no, I can't see you guys. So don't worry, I'm not spying on you. Oh, suspense, that's a nice one. Yeah, so as much terminology as you can possibly remember. So remember, we had stop fez, we had proud smile, deforest, any of those. Could be something to do with planning, how we structure things. Could be any of those. Yep, direct address, creativity. Let's get some more of you over on here, please. We've got 26 of us. We've only had 3 people pop over. So tell me what deforest means. Tell me what proud smile means. Tell me what stop fez means. Tell me any of those other language devices that don't come into those acronyms, but could be there if we had words that would fit in nicely with them. Foreshadowing, yep, lovely. Metaphor, simile, good. Yep, let's have some more people shouting some stuff out. Fabulous, this is more like it. Right. Euphemism, allusion, brilliant, personification, sibilance. Be careful how you're spelling sibilance. I'll type that for you when we move back over. Same with onomatopoeia. Zooming in, yep, diction. Oh, right. I'll go over diction in a moment. Euphemism, rhetorical questions, facts. Yeah, similes, repetition, triadic structure. Interesting. Drop shift zoom link. I like that. Is that a structure that your teachers teach you to use? Because I haven't heard of that before. That's interesting. Rule of 3 a triplet. Motive language, opinion, tension, cyclical structure, brilliant. So many coming up, I can't read them quickly enough. Statistics, enjambment, be careful, that one's for poetry. So that's when a line in a poem runs into another line without being interrupted by punctuation. So we can't be using that in our English language because that's for literature side. We don't do poetry in the language section. Right, cracking. Tone, yep, nice. I think we will leave it there. Linear, non-linear, that's lovely. Yep, something that I haven't mentioned. Juxtaposition, fabulous. Pathetic fallacy, good. Unreliable narrator, fantastic, yeah. Fabulous stuff, right. Change of tenses, yeah, oxymoron. So many. Setting, yeah, lovely. Right, I'm going to close it down for now because I think we could be here all day if we wanted to. Right. Get rid of those. Right. So, thank you for that, guys. You've come up with absolutely oodles of stuff. Brilliant. Right, let me just check the Q&As. Yeah, yes to juxtaposition and alliteration. Enjambment, I've already mentioned. Romance would be a genre. Fab. Right, so paper one is called Explorations in Creative Reading and Writing, which basically means fiction reading and writing. So it's your fiction paper. So we're only going to be talking about question 5 today, which are the creative writing pieces. So you've got either your narrative or your descriptive writing. So if you're doing narrative writing, it's generally students make less mistakes doing the narrative writing than they do the descriptive writing. And I think the reason for that being is that descriptive writing is really difficult to maintain for a long period of time, particularly at your age. So you tend to get students who start off with the descriptive writing task and then go off and tell a story, which is the narrative writing. So you need to be careful that if you are choosing the descriptive writing task, that you are solely being descriptive. You're not having characters going off on adventures. You're not having a change of scene. You need to be in that place, usually within that picture that you're given. Description tasks are usually the picture one, and you need to stay there. You can't go off jutting to other places in the world. You can't add in characters that are really odd and going through all these different things in your story, because that's not descriptive writing. And my advice for you would be is that if you feel like you are prone to doing that, choose the narrative task, because you are absolutely allowed to do that in the narrative task. So narrative mainly focuses on plot. So when I've been planning with you guys, I've been using my story mountain, which is something that we tend to carry on over from primary school into secondary, but is really nice in working the arc out. And the use of characters is integral. You need to have characters. You need to think about character profiles, what sort of characters fit into what sort of story. AQA and other exam boards want you to be writing stories that are believable, that are credible. They don't want you to go off and write some sort of mad thing about an alien invasion or a world apocalypse or anything like that, which is really crazy, or time travel, anything like that. If you want to write stuff like that, brilliant, go write it in your own time. But AQA, WJC, I know, and other exam boards want you to write something that could happen, which is a little boring, I suppose, maybe, but that's how it is, I'm afraid. So bear that in mind. My tips for narrative writing is, when you're revising, come up with some really sturdy character profiles. There's loads of character profile templates on the internet. The ones that I use are from Twinkle, which I think I've shown to you guys before. So they were doing free resources for a couple of months whilst we were all sort of homeschooling and panicking, but now it's gone back onto paid. But there are some resources on there that are free. You go to TES, you could make your own if you like, working out physical appearance, personality traits, perhaps working out like a mini family tree. So you've got a backlog of characters that you can think, oh, I'm going to use that character for this story because that would work really well because they link in like this. So you could potentially save yourself a bit of work by doing that. Obviously, don't go mad and make hundreds and hundreds of characters up because you need to, I'd say maybe have like a handful. That might be quite a nice way to do a little bit of gentle revision, I suppose. Right, descriptive writing. So considering the overall big picture and smaller details. So you need to be having a really nice range of zooming in and out, essentially. Not focusing on one individual person. And by that, I mean the entirety of the text is focused on one person. Apologies if you can hear that plane going over. So, absolutely focusing on a person if you're looking at small detail, but don't do it for the entire piece, because then if you focus on a character for the entire piece, it will probably turn into a narrative. You can use first or third person. I have some kids who prefer to write in first person because they prefer to put themselves in it. You can do that. Generally, I think third person is easier, but that's my personal opinion. Right. I don't work at your school. I don't work at a school at the moment. Haven't had any messages through. I'm not ignoring you. What is all this attack? Right, so I'm not ignoring you. I haven't had your messages. I know you've said that you've wanted 3 to 4 lessons tuition a week, but I haven't received anything. I promise you I'm not ignoring you. I just haven't had it. So yeah, show us your books. You said you would show them. I did that a couple of weeks ago. I didn't promise you any of that, so you won't be seeing any books because I've sort of done that thing a couple of times. Yeah, TES is a brilliant website. I'll show you Twinkle towards the end if you want me to, guys, but it's pretty straightforward. I didn't promise I'd show you my books again. Let's put this to an end. This has nothing to do with what we're going on with today. Right, we're ignoring all of those questions now. Let's move on. Right. So these are the big 2 planning tools resources that I teach my students. So first one, story mounting, really straightforward. When I'm planning stories to write for you guys, I sort of draw a little sort of U shape and then put numbers on it. And that's how I use the plan. I don't spend ages writing the mountain out. See if I can find one. Brilliant, first one out. So, I literally just draw that little rubbish diagram, number each spot, and then I write each number down the side and what I'm going to do at each point, which is super quick. When it comes to doing the descriptive writing, this is something that one of my students suggested because she did it at school and I really liked it, and it was, I thought, really good. So again, for each of these points, a paragraph minimum each. And with that one, with the descriptive one, I just do a very similar thing, but instead of numbers, I put big picture or BP. Here, MBP for next big picture, C small detail, and that's all of it. Don't spend any time making your planning look beautiful. Right, okay, so in terms of language devices, you can use a variety of language devices to write narrative and descriptive writing tasks. There isn't really any differentiation between the two. You can use all of them for both of the tasks. So one thing that I've been suggesting to you guys is to write either proud smile or deforest down. So for question 1, you would write proud smile down, and you'd write all of the words that go into proud smile. And then you can tick them off as you go along as sort of a little success criteria that you can take in and just splurge onto the page as soon as you get in. So that's a really nice way to do it. There's proud smile. Please shout at me now if you don't know what any of those means. The bottom one there is edit that's fallen off. You know what? I'm not going to check my last YouTube video. I'm not. So there is a YouTube, quite rightly, someone has said there is a YouTube video up with all the book recommendations that I gave you guys. So you can go look at that, because I haven't got anything new to show you. Right, we're doing a Kahoot at the end, don't worry. Oxymoron, thank you. So an oxymoron is where you put 2 words next to each other which have opposite meanings. So for example, black and white, or alone together, or there was that together but separate, something that was, oh, what was it? It was the first Premier League game that was on Pick. On the stands it had an oxymoron, and I can't remember what it was. It was something like, oh, that was what it was. It was apart but together. Was that the Norwich game? Norwich? No, it wasn't Norwich Bournemouth. It doesn't matter. But apart but together, that's an oxymoron. Right, couple of, a small giant, yeah, that's lovely, Pranav, brilliant. Will this recording be on YouTube? Yes, it will. But I don't know when it will go up. Right, okie doke. So, just a couple of things to point out in terms of spelling there. So, onomatopoeia is really horrible to spell. I think it's just one of those words you've just got to go and learn. I did have an acronym for it that I tried with one of my students. Neither of us could get it into our head because it really didn't make sense. But I think it's just when you've got to go and learn. Sibilance is S-I, not S-Y. But completely logical, you're putting S-Y because, you know, symbolism and simile, it's the same sound, isn't it? So completely justified that one. And the other one that I was going to come back to, which is diction. So diction isn't really something that we get in written stuff. So diction means how you pronounce your words. So if you have good diction, that means that you can understand every word that somebody is saying. If you have poor diction, that means you can't understand what on earth somebody is saying. So for example, in my grade 3 singing exam, one of my songs was, your diction's not very good, because he couldn't understand what I was singing, couldn't understand the words. So that's what diction means, which isn't really something that we can write about in our text, but I imagine you might be getting that from things like the John Agard poems that we've looked at, where we have dialects coming through. So that's almost like diction, but diction is something that just comes from our mouths. It's not something that we can actually record on paper. It's a bit of a tricky one, that, but I understand where you're coming from. Right. Onomatopoeia is there. It's here. That's onomatopoeia. What is pathetic fallacy? Right. I'm not going to do the Kahoot a little early. I'm really sorry, but you can sort of catch the YouTube video later and you can still have a go at playing it by yourself, because it'll still be public. Right, I think anyway, I might be wrong, but I'm not going to do it any earlier today, but I am really sorry. So, pathetic fallacy. So pathetic fallacy is where the weather reflects a mood. So for example, today it's absolutely scorching hot. So if you've got a text where the weather is absolutely scorching, that might be representing a really happy, joyful mood. If you've got a really sad, somber mood, you might have you might have it raining or thunder and lightning. Thunder and lightning may be more so dangerous. So if you think of things like Storm on the Island, that poem, that has a lot of pathetic fallacy because it is all about the storm wreaking havoc and causing danger. Right. No worries. I constantly can't see things that I'm looking straight at, don't worry. Right, structural devices. So, in order to get your top marks, you need to use some sort of structural features. So, paper 1 question 3 and paper 1 question 2, use as much of that knowledge as you can in your paper 1 question 5. So flashbacks and cyclical structure are the most obvious ones. But if you look at the stop fares, if you want it to be really obvious, you will naturally do things like perspective, start and ending, probably setting, zooming in and out. It's things that are very purposeful and you need to think about, which really shouts out to the examiner, I am doing this intentionally and it's not just here because it's a byproduct that I'm writing. So I think the best ways to achieve that is do a flashback. If you're really challenging yourself, do a cyclical structure, but I think whacking a flashback in there works fine. Maybe a change in pace, tension, mood, some of those ingredients in there. Right, so in terms of accessing top marks, apart from accessing top marks, you need a variety of language devices, at least one exciting structural feature, which really use a flashback. That seems to be the easiest way to do them. Make sure you've got a range of sentence lengths, a range of discourse markers. So discourse markers means things like firstly, and then going on with your next paragraph, or then, or recently, or something like that, which moves time on. It's a signifier that you are moving on. A range of sentence starters, so maybe using some fronted adverbials. So despite it being incredibly hot outside, Vicki was still very cold, right? So instead of saying Vicki was still very cold despite it being very warm outside, that would be how we would normally structure that. But to change it up a bit, we shift the despite it being very hot outside to the front. So you've got a bit of a mixture. Get as much advanced vocab in there as you can. Again, if you want to do a little bit of light revision, just have a fiddle about on a thesaurus. Or when you are having a go at writing stuff, fiddle about on a thesaurus. And do not put a language device in every sentence because it's overkill. Right, okay, so in terms of looking at the mark scheme, I'm thinking we might come back to that at the end. I think I have mentioned Mr. Brough videos to you before, but there are some really good ones on descriptive writing and just the question 5s, some tips, hints and tricks, and they're free to watch. So they're on YouTube. Go check him out. He's really great. Right, so I've got a narrative writing and a descriptive writing task. I feel like I've just talked to you guys today. Right, so this is the description. So I've tried to keep these as close as possible. So am I saying that flashbacks and cyclical structures will get us higher marks? I tell you what, let's have a look at, let's look at the mark scheme. Let's throw caution to the wind. So for content, so it's this bullet point here really. Writing is compelling, incorporating a range of convincing and complex ideas. So that's relatively talking about your structure, that one, and varied inventive use of structural features. So it's really difficult to get into this top band anyway. Very few people actually get full marks. It's very rare. I don't think I've ever given anyone full marks for a piece of work, even though I've had some incredibly good ones. So to get varied and inventive use of structural features, you need to be making an active thought into putting something in that is clear and obvious, that you've thought, right, I need a really good structural feature in here. And generally flashbacks and cyclical structures are ones which are obvious, that don't necessarily come along with a package deal. You will always have a perspective because you will always be writing from first or third person. You will always have a start and ending because that's how stories work. You will almost always have a setting. But things like cyclical structures, using tension, using shifts in pace, shifts in mood, those things take some crafting. Those don't happen by accident, essentially, is what I'm saying. So you need to make sure that you're really thinking about having some variety in there to really access those really top marks. There isn't anything that says if you use a flashback, you're going to get into this grade boundary. It doesn't work like that. There isn't a hierarchy of better structural features to use, but using things such as flashbacks is really obvious, and it's very clear that you are intentionally using a good structural feature and that you're varying it. And that is the advice that Mr. Bruff gives, and a few other people give as well, because it's the most straightforward one to do, essentially. Right, let's whiz through these. So this is the description one. So I think you guys have seen this one before. So the scorching midday sun glared down onto the historic cobbled streets. The scattered crowd bustled and floated between the gems that caught their eyes. The breeze brushed through the valley of purchasers, creating a gentle rustle of leaves above their heads. Although they did not notice, their intrigue and determination were not to be disturbed. The gentle clashing of leaves encouraged the calls of innocence from birds. Their scintillating summer song drifted weightlessly above the landscape, unnoticed by those below. The beehive below hummed its merry song, louder as they exchanged nectar between themselves. They all were in search of that elite liquid gold. At the other end of the street, the stones melted into one another, opening out into a pathway leading to serenity. How could anyone want to be anywhere else? Startling blue skies, ornate independent shops, beautiful flower beds brimming with life. Nowhere could compare. That fragrant smell of cherry blossom twisted and turned through every crevice like a prima ballerina. She draped her arms gracefully around each and every one of the proprietors, filling them with melancholy memories of their childhoods. The Victorian-style stall stood proudly, fumigating the area with its own handmade concoction, fudge. This, mixed with nature's own creation, created a euphoric, unmistakable perfume. This was the smell of summer. Delicately tucked away in a quiet corner lay a stall of treasures. The proprietor of the stall, a timid middle-aged lady draped in shawls, perched like a canary on the edge of its swing. In front of her lay a collection of crystals laid out in uniform lines. The soldiers of homeopathy lay their purposes out in front of them, willing to change a life. Placed further back, giant domes of amethyst stood proudly, dancing merrily in the sunlight, coaxing people to the stall for a closer inspection. Dream catchers fluttered in the wind as they hung from the stalls. Why is that dropped off? The stall's front, I think it is. Right, so that's the description. So the thing that could be better there is adding a structural feature, so adding a flashback, so perhaps comparing what the market looked like 100 years ago, something like that. That would get me that particular bullet point. Right, so this is the story. So I've tried to shop and change things. Oh, that's so impressive if your sister got full marks. It's so hard to do. How did I find that website? So if you just type in AQA and go onto their website and then click through to subjects, English language, and then GCSE, then you'll find your way there. Or if you just click on English language GCSE, so because I search AQA so often, it just comes up. But I'll start from the beginning if you want me to later. But just search AQA English Language GCSE past papers and that entire screen comes up with all the past papers, mark schemes, examiner reports and inserts. Righty-roo. Okay, so the scorching midday sun glared down on the historic cobbled streets. The scattered crowd bustled and floated between the gems that caught their eyes. In a quiet corner, Emily wandered, intrigued and puzzled as to how such beautiful trinkets had been made by humans. The warm breeze brushed, and that's just a continuation of what I've used on the other side. As she weaved her way through the throng of people. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Emma. Thanks for posting that. Emily noticed a child perched on the pavement's edge. After keeping her beady eye on him for a few minutes, she approached. Hello, is everything okay? The blonde mop of hair glanced up with fright and worry, tears streaming down his cool face. The beehive below hummed its merry song louder as they exchanged nectar between themselves, but Emily was deaf to it. I can't find my mum, the cherub said innocently. Well, I'm sure she can't have gone far, she replied. She took his hand in hers and meandered to the other end of the street where the stones melted into one another, opening out a pathway leading to serenity. Right, now we are out of all that hubbub, why don't you tell me where you last saw her? I don't know. I was looking at the fudge store, I turned around and she wasn't there anymore. And then we've got that whole, the concoction of cherry and fudge that I've used in the description. Emily smiled her friendly smile and encouraged the boy off his new perch, leading them towards the fudge stall. As she walked, she wondered, how could anyone want to be anywhere else? So I've recycled that, and I've also recycled the rest of that. So sparkling, independent shops, beautiful flowers, bringing life. No one could compare, but right now she had a job to do. So I'm going to leave that there so you can see that I've adapted the description into a story. It's not as strong as it could be because I'm working with material I've already got, but I wanted to show you sort of a close what a narrative looks like, what a description looks like on exactly the same task as much as I could have done. Alpha Q, I am looking at AQA because that's the most popular one. Right, I'm going to whiz through paper 2 because I spent far too much time enjoying myself talking about that. Right, so writers' viewpoints and perspectives. So let's use your non-fiction paper. So I've battered you over the head with purpose, audience and format and why it's important. Purpose, why are you writing this piece? You will almost always be asked to persuade or to argue. Audience, who are you writing for? So generally you might be asked to write for your peer group, you might be asked to write for adults, or you might be asked to write for an individual person. And then you format how your style of writing is going to be presented, so you'll be told that as well. Speech, letter, newspaper article, all of that. Your purpose, so you are going to probably be asked to argue, persuade. Deforest features are there for you. Use as many as you can and use certain vocabulary. So surely we must ensure that the future of this generation is blah, 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 whatever. So using a lot of really strong language. Audience, so this affects the register. So if you're writing, so I'm going to be doing to the Minister of Transport, how I write to the Minister of Transport would be different to how I write for students my own age, if I was your age. So there's things which subtly change, but by and large, again, it relatively stays the same in the sorts of things that you might use and say. Format, that tells you the genre conventions you should be including. So really, genre conventions don't really change too much. The big one is letters, so making sure you've got an address, a date, and a dear whoever, and yours sincerely or faithfully on there. So, yeah. Essentially, though, that's the only one which really I think might catch people out a little bit. Deforest, which I've gone over time and time again, and I think you guys are all happy with, but if there's one on there that you're not sure about, shout at me now and I will go through it. Right, so let me just catch up on the Q&A. Right, so quiz will be coming up very shortly. I'm going to whiz through these 2 examples. So, right, so I've chosen the same thing. So this is a past exam question. Cars are noisy, dirty, smelly and downright dangerous. They should be banned from all towns and city centres, allowing people to walk and cycle in peace. Write a letter to the Minister of Transport arguing your point of view on this statement. So that's shifted over there, that's naughty. Right, okay, so drive should be on the other side. It's fallen off when I've uploaded it. So our format is a letter, our purpose is to argue, to persuade, and our audience is the Minister of Transport. So, dear Minister for Transport, I am writing to you to express my opinion on the issues surrounding individual transport vehicles in the city centre. So I'm kicking off with why I'm writing my topic sentence. As our understanding of pollution develops, it is clear to see that there is a direct correlation between pollution and travel. Since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, we have seen a dwindling amount of private transport use, such as cars, which has positively affected our global environment. Of course, this is wonderful news and something to be celebrated. However, does this mean we should ban cars from all towns and city centres? So that's moving on really nicely, really smoothly onto our next one. I've kept it very topical, talking about public affairs. Over the last decade, we have seen a huge increase in the usage of public transport, something to be encouraged. This has meant the emissions have been reduced by 20% and there's been a lot less congestion on the road. I've made it up, but it sounds relatively plausible. Make sure that your facts and statistics sound relatively plausible. Don't go mad with them. Despite this growth in popularity, a recent study found that 30% of people would be more inclined to use public transport if it were more financially accessible. The use of buses and trains can come at an extortionate cost to those who have little money to spare. Consequently, we have seen a plateau in the last year of those who are willing to utilise public transport links. To provide a solution for this problem, we must take back control over public transport by nationalising all the services. So a potential solution to that problem, I'm giving him an issue and telling him what he could potentially do about it. Then I'm sort of using this case study. This is something that is going on in my area. So I live in York. So the person who asked which uni I went to York and I haven't left. So I'm an overgrown student. Recently, York City Council have announced that in 2 years' time, they expect to see their city centre free of cars due to the success of their public transport. Those who need to drive from further afield will be expected to park at a park and ride location outside of the city centre and then travel in on buses. This is a fantastic achievement and perhaps a policy that we should be rolling out nationwide, although there are some minority groups which have not been considered. So I'm posing a potential issue that we could use to solve. Then I'm posing the slightly more delicate problem with a sort of blanket ruling, and then thinking about how we can fix that sort of dysfunction in the machine, essentially. Although the council stated that those who have disabilities will be able to access the city centre by car, there has been little thought into how it will affect them. If we see a reduced need for car parks, there will be a reduction in the amount of areas that disabled people will be able to park in, creating accessibility issues. In addition, how will we monitor vehicles? If a camera system is in operation, the cars that people can travel in will be limited, meaning that those who are disabled will not be able to travel in friends and family's cars. So I've used something which I know about in real life and I've adapted it. Has my yours sincerely fallen off the end? What's going on today with the uploading? Right, so I've changed this into a speech. So this is slightly different. So have you noticed the amount of transmissions that we are creating by using public transport? So I'm using a hook, I'm getting their attention straight in with a rhetorical question. We as humans create an excessive amount of pollution unnecessarily throughout our lives. And then I've pretty much said exactly the same thing. Right. And then at the bottom here, I've said exactly the same thing here, but I've just altered it slightly. By nationalising all the services, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's concerned with the amount of money our parents splurge on us getting the bus to school. So making it relevant to that particular audience. Then this, is it a problem for most of these people? Probably not, but it is a problem generally, and it is a problem that we might see in the future. So I've tried to adapt it a little bit. So same thing again, down to families' cars. Although this isn't something that affects the majority of us, it is very much food for thought. Think of those around you that will suffer as a consequence of this being a blanket rule nationwide. So just adapting it slightly to make it relevant to the different audiences, really. How you're presenting stuff will pretty much be the same. Right, so let's have a crack at the Kahoot then. I know you're all desperate, so unplug. Right, I think there's 10 questions. There's a few true and false. There's some which have more than one answer, but you can only put in one answer, which is a bit of a pain because if I wanted multiple answers, I'd have to pay for it. But some of them, if you're a little bit torn because you think 2 might be the answer, you are probably right to think that. Right, whilst I'm waiting for a few more of you to pop on. So, if you go to AQA's website, then click on Subjects, English, then it'll take you to this generic page because they've got A-levels on there as well, and functional skills. There's loads of different qualifications that they do. GCSE English Language, and then if you want past papers, if you go to all assessment resources, and then it will take you to this page, which has all the past papers up until last year. The 2019 papers aren't up yet. And then there's everything that you need essentially. There is the odd insert which doesn't have one of the texts published because of copyright issues, but if you have enough Scout on the internet, enough of a Scout, you will probably come across it. I've managed to do it that way, where a school has uploaded it onto their website and you can nick their PDF. Fab. Right, I'll kick the Kahoot off and I'll have a go at answering that question. Right, let's get going. Don't want to make my face bigger than it already is. Right, so a couple of these we've done before. So satire is often used to speak about politics. Yep, so it's sort of like a political sarcasm essentially, which usually politics. So if you look at Private Eye, if you sort of see any memes about politicians, that's satire. Generalizations can usually go hand in hand with stereotypes. So you've got to know what 2 pieces of terminology are for this one. Who's saying they want these lessons 3 to 4 in the day? Right, I will ask that question towards the end. Yep, so stereotypes being sort of what you expect a particular group of people to be, to act like, which you then make generalizations based on that stereotype. Which is most likely to be the least credible source? Yeah, personal blog, mainly because it is sort of entirely opinion based. So when I write my blog, no one checks it to see whether what I've written is fine. I just publish it. Online encyclopedias can be a little bit iffy, so I imagine a lot of your teachers have said don't trust anything from Wikipedia, but there's some sort of really niche stuff on Wikipedia. You should be listening to me. That's an example of what. So there's some really niche stuff on Wikipedia which must be true, because why would you spend time writing about them essentially? But generally I find Wikipedia quite interesting. Yeah, it's an imperative, so it's saying you should do something and it's direct address because it's directly saying it, somebody is using you. Cars are dirty, smelly, and a hazard to the environment is an example of a what? I really like this music. I don't know why I like it. It's really sad. Fabulous. Yeah, so it's an opinion and it's a rule of 3. So you've got dirty, smelly, and hazard to the environment. The stars started to shine is an example of what? Sibilance, yeah, so the repetition of the certain sh sound. My stomach dropped like the dip of a gigantic roller coaster. Yeah, so it's got like in it. So if you'd removed the like and sort of rejigged it a little bit, it could be a metaphor. How could we possibly help him is an example of what? Oh, missing a punctuation mark there. If you work out what the punctuation mark is, you should get the answer. Yep, rhetorical question. Fabulous. Only what left? 2. The wind howled in pain is an example of what? Yep, personification. The wind can't actually howl. Last one. The gigantic foot is an example of what? Yeah, hyperbole. Usually foots aren't gigantic. Who got 9 out of 10? Fabulous. Oh, we've got 1 10 out of 10. Crucial guy. Well done, everyone. Fab. Right. So, shout if there's anything that I've missed that you guys wanted me to answer. So, Bola, we've had a question. So, lots of people are saying that they want lessons at 3 to 4 in the day, as well as the other webinars. Is it possible to do another poll and switch it about?
So just to clarify, is that another session at 3 to 4 or just move the pre-existing sessions?
I think it's moved the pre-existing. So lots of people are saying they want these lessons at 3 to 4 in the day with the other webinars. I also agree about this. Is it possible for us to do another poll which can occur in next week's lessons?
I will look into this and get back to everyone, but I don't see why not.
Cool.
I'll look into it.
Fab. Right. Okay. An anecdote. So an anecdote is a personal story which sort of creates a connection. So I'm constantly saying anecdotes to you guys to give examples of stuff. So that's what an anecdote is. Apparently teachers have said we can have 1-to-1 tutoring with teachers. Is it free? Right. So MyTutor mainly offers 1-to-1 tuition. It's not free. So I think there's something, am I right in thinking, Bola, that there's sort of over 6,000 tutors active at the moment?
Yeah, I believe that to be the case, yes.
Yeah, so there's absolutely masses of us. So we do 1-to-1 tuition, and that is the main thing that MyTutor offers. So it's not free. The lessons per hour range between £20 and £40, depending on the price of the tutor that you're going with. It's sort of, that pricing is down to the discretion of the tutor. So mine is at £30 to £32 an hour. But off the back of that one, Bola quickly wants to have a quick chat with you guys. I'll put the slide up. Right, so sorry that's overlapped a bit, Bola. So I'll pass over to you to explain this slide.
Thanks, Vicki. Good afternoon, everyone. So as Vicki already said, we do indeed provide extra support in the form of one-on-one tuition, which is basically where you get one tutor for that hour, like completely focused on you, going through particular topics, answering questions you may have, etc. We also do offer these small group courses. So small group courses are very similar to these large group courses, which you're all currently on. But unlike the large group courses, with the small group courses, you only get 6 students in one session. So there'll be less of you. They'll occur weekly. So you have one session per week. That will be around an hour long, and they do tend to be cheaper than the one-on-one tuition. We are planning on launching a physics GCSE and introduction to A-level physics on the small group tutorials. You can find out a bit more about this on the site. The link is on the slide, but I've actually also put it on the chat. You should all be able to see the chat. If you click on there, you'll be able to get on the site and find out a bit more about what that entails. That's it.
Fab. I think you've answered the couple of questions that have come up, which is, do you have to pay for small groups? So yes, you do, but it's cheaper than one-to-one. And how do you get onto the small group courses, which is just going to this link, which Bola's posted in the chat, and just having a browse through there. We don't have time for another Kahoot, sorry. Right, I think we have covered everything, unless you guys have any more questions or want to shout at me quickly with something that we haven't covered. What is the drop-in sessions? Do we have drop-in sessions, Bola?
I don't know if you're referring to the free meetings.
Yeah, that might be it.
These 15-minute long free meetings where you get a chance to basically speak to a tutor and see whether you'd like to establish one-on-one tuition sessions with them. Yeah, so if that's not what you mean, just do clarify and I'll try and answer.
Yeah, so free meetings, if you are thinking of having one-on-one, I think they're so worth booking, because it gives both parties to decide whether, so for me, it gives me the opportunity to find out what you guys need and whether I can provide that, and whether it's my speciality. Very rarely I do say no. And then you guys can decide whether you like me and my teaching style as well, which is the most important thing for you guys. If you don't sort of get my teaching style and it's not your sort of thing, then finding another tutor is really good, and you don't have to pay for those meetings to meet up with people. Right, okay, so I think we've covered everything, Bola. Have I missed anything? Is there anything else I need to be saying?
Not that I can think of. I think you've done a marvellous job. Thank you very much.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Right. Thank you so much for coming, guys. I love seeing you every week. You brighten my week up. So I will see you all next Wednesday. I think we're doing unseen poetry. I might be wrong though. But have a look at the schedule. It will let you know. So have a gorgeous week, guys. These sessions are staying as normal, I think, for the time being. So have an absolutely gorgeous week. Make sure you're safe, look after yourselves, and get some sun rays. Have a great week, guys.